Good evening, everyone. I am Tim Blake, the principal here at Nunaka Valley. I want to thank you all for coming out. Quite a few people here. This is a great turnout. Appreciate you taking part in this process. I was thinking today that for the students that are here that I saw come in, what a great week of sort of civics that they get to observe. We were privileged enough to be a voting station last week, and now we've got this town hall, so good week for them to see that. I do want to acknowledge a few people that we've got here. We've got some school board members and some elected officials. We've also got Dr. Bryan, our superintendent, present. I want to thank you, most of all, the community for coming out, and I'll turn it over to our panel now. This is Shannon Bingham. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Shannon Bingham. I am a school planning consultant. I've worked in Alaska for well over a decade for half dozen or so districts. Tonight is a town hall meeting. Our intent is to share a little bit of data with you, a plan for a topic that is not exactly something that's a happy topic, the idea of closing this school and repurposing it. But we would like to present some of the foundation information that helped us arrive at the idea that we should explore consolidating approximately 6 schools in the Anchorage School District. We have a panel that can answer questions. There are Chromebooks out in the hall. We are using those to collect a survey. There are QR codes on a panel out in the hallway. If you would like to scan that with your smartphone, you can take our survey in 6 languages using your phone. At the table are Jim Anderson, our Chief Financial Officer, Rob Holland, our Chief of Maintenance and Operations, and Eric Viste, our Senior Director for Elementary Education. So we're hoping to be able to answer all of your questions. We have a couple of microphones set up, and the format of the evening is that Jim and I will make a presentation that addresses some of the information, some of the data, some of the issues associated with the district's financial condition, and then we will receive a list of people who would like to ask a question, and we'll call you by name one at a time to come up to the microphone and make either a 3-minute statement or ask a question, and then we will respond to your questions. The sign-up list is in the hall, and so if you were not able to sign up, you have kind of until the end of our little presentation to sign up. So if you would like to put your name on the list, I'll call on everybody in the order in which you signed up. We expect to be here a little over an hour, hopefully, and hope to get to everyone's questions. This is one of 6 in-person town halls that the district will be running as we lead up to a board meeting on December 15th, during which the district will decide among a half dozen different strategies to attempt to address its $68 million budgetary shortfall. Those include the closure of schools, the elimination of programs, increasing class sizes, various other administrative and program reductions that would help us get to our budgetary goals. Increasing class size is always our last resort, so a lot of what we are proposing here is targeted toward trying to keep the classroom experience of individual children as consistent as possible, meaning about the same number of children in the room. So that is always our paramount consideration. And we hope to show you information that would allow you to arrive at your own conclusions. So with that, I'd like to introduce Jim Anderson to talk a little bit about our current budgetary challenge. Jim?
All right, thanks, Shannon. Good evening, everyone. If you go to the next chart. I'd like to go over this chart that shows how we got where we are today. And if you look at the far left side of the chart, you'll see some dark blue bars, and they start at FY17, or fiscal year 17, and they go all the way up through next school year, which is fiscal year 24. So fiscal year 17 was the first day of school of August 2016. That's the last time our state legislature has increased the base student allocation of $5,930 all the way up until this school year. And I'll talk a little bit about that. So the state's funding formula is based on the number of students we have enrolled, a lot of other factors as it goes through the formula, and then at the end, they multiply the total number of students by $5,930, and that's the starting point for state and local funding for the school districts. And it hasn't changed since August of 2016. As you look at the top, you'll see a red line that goes across. That's annual inflation. So every year since fiscal year 17, we've had an inflationary increase, except for 1 year, and there's always been this gap. So our funding gap actually started in fiscal year 18, and you can see that there's a gap between the red line and the bottom. So we cut several staff positions, we merged programs, and through the next several years, you'll see that there kept being a gap. And every time we kept cutting around the edges, merging programs, closing 2 schools, and doing everything we could to include the gray line on top of the blue bars, which is our use of fund balance. You can see by fiscal year 21, we were using a significant amount of our savings to try to not have a reduction in force in our classrooms. And then you can really see the yellow bars. So for the last 3 years, we've had a significant amount of federal relief dollars. The state made a public and conscious decision not to increase education funding until after there was no more federal relief dollars, because they were working for other priorities in the state. And I think everyone knows there's a lot of priorities in the state, to include homeless, drug use, suicides, and of course the PFD. And so that's what they focused on this last session. So they did, during the last session, give us $16 million in one-time funding, which the board decided to save until next year, so that helped a little bit. And they also gave us a $30 BSA increase for next school year. So that $30 is equal to a 0.5% increase in 7 years. So effectively, every year, Andy Ratliff, my budget director over against the wall, have been building our budget. We start building our budget based off 5930, and now we're on our 6th, 7th year of building a budget on August 2016 revenue. It is possible that the state will give us one-time money sometime this session, although you can never count on it. It doesn't happen every year. But by charter, we have to pass our budget in February, and by state statute, it has to be a balanced budget. So we figured out our deficit in July. We've been briefing the board every 2 weeks since the end of July. And our projected deficit, not knowing how many kids were going to show up for school this year, was $68 million. So since the end of July, we have laid a lot of very difficult choices at the board's plate to make possible reductions, from Ignite, 6th grade band and orchestra, immersion programs, sports, school closures. All of them are horrible choices. And none of us feels any different about that. We also know that 88% of all of our money goes towards people, either their salaries or their benefits in the district. So when we talked about these programs, we understand that these programs, whatever they are, may be the one thing that motivates our kids to wake up that day excited about school. And so we've been trying to prioritize, and we've now done this for about 5-6 years straight, cutting all of those that were acceptable alternatives. And this year, you know, when you have a $68 million starting point, you know, we really have gotten down to almost everything we've recommended has been difficult and painful for everybody. So, you know, now that we know we had a few more kids than we expected, our deficit's going to be a little bit lower, but it's still close to $60 million for next year. And that's kind of where we stand. We'll be briefing the board again tomorrow night on more information, and I certainly encourage you to talk to the school board about your priorities, talk to the administration tonight after this is over and in front of a mic, because we do want your input on how we're going to prioritize this. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. So I've been handed the sign-up list, so if anyone would still like to sign up, I can put it over on the picnic table. Would anyone else like to sign up? Okay. Well, you might ask yourself, why are we here? And a lot of school districts and school communities are asking that same question. All over the West, family sizes have been declining, school populations have been declining, and a lot of districts probably very dramatically over the last 7 years. I work all over the Western U.S., and a lot of districts are in the circumstances that Anchorage is in. We've had smaller families, declining birth rates. We just don't have as many preschool students coming into the elementary school grades, and that's driving the sizes of our schools down. And in a lot of communities where that long-term change has been happening, it's been happening for almost 30 years. So here in Anchorage, I would say over the last 27 years, we have 7,000 fewer elementary school kids than we did in 1995. So we're looking at having closed 2 schools, Mount Iliamna and Mount Spur, and we had 55 elementaries in 1995, and we have 53 now. So Anchorage has resisted closing schools over the years, as have a lot of districts that really value school communities and neighborhoods and having schools be the center of neighborhoods, which as school administrators, we have all supported that for decades in our own careers. But slowly we've watched money leak out of public education, and it become extremely difficult for us to operate small enrollment centers. So that's part of the reason why, if you say, well, why us? Well, this is a small enrollment school. There are about a dozen schools in the Anchorage School District that are around 300, less than 300, or have a neighborhood that may have 125 or 150 students in it, and we're importing another neighborhood from 4 miles away in order to get it up to 300. So those circumstances really suggest that if we're going to make school efficiency be one of the things that we try to do in order to try to economize and continue to have the experience of individual children in the classroom change as little as possible, that's part of that strategy. So I'm probably working for 4 districts right now that are this size or smaller and are looking at closing schools in a serious way for the first time in decades, because we've hit this budgetary cliff where we have had not great economic times during the pandemic. At the end of the pandemic, the money that was being provided to us by the federal government has expired, and a lot of state governments that are strapped and a lot of things that they provide to their clientele are realizing that they're at this budgetary cliff. And schools are a big part of every state's budget. It's the top 3 expenditures that states make, depending upon the state. Schools are right there. So when things change economically in a state, they very frequently change economically for the school district. So our circumstances are, oops, it looks like my fingers have done the walking on our PowerPoint here. Hang on just a second. There we go. So there are challenges. We have 18 schools in the district that are under about a 65% utilization of their capacity. So basically, they're 2/3 full. So we're operating those schools, we're fully staffing them, we're heating them, we're doing all of the maintenance responsibilities. Our operating budget is about $12.4 million every year, but we're running a significant number of schools that are only 2/3 full. And a lot of the others are kind of in the 70s. So we have a lot of schools that are underutilized and we're not very efficient. We have special service staff. Well, what does that mean? Well, those are specialized teachers other than the classroom teacher that may be a 5th grade teacher, general education teachers. In every building, about 35% of every faculty is a specialized education service provider of some sort. Either an occupational therapist, a physical therapist, a speech language pathologist, a counselor, a social worker, a special education teacher, an English as a learned language teacher of some sort, and so on and so forth. We have a lot of those kind of service providers in the district, and when we have a lot of small buildings, we're spreading that staff in addition to art, music, and PE teachers, which we have become unable to fully fund. We're scheduling those people over multiple buildings. So they may be in 3 or 4 buildings over the course of a week. So because of that, we are inefficient from a staffing standpoint. And a lot of those folks really may be needed on Monday, but they're not in the building until Thursday. So we have some challenges with really being able to offer the services that we want because we're spread thin in that regard. We have 67 combination classes in the district. That means we have a school that's maybe 1.5 sections per grade level, meaning we don't have enough children to have 2 full first grades, 2 full second grades, but we have more children than we need for a single first grade, a single second grade. So we do like a first, second grade combination, or we do a second, third grade combination. We have 67 of those around the district. So that creates some real challenges for us because those teachers have to do a prep for 2 different age categories. A second grade curriculum is significantly different from third grade curriculum, so it's quite an issue, and a lot of parents, frankly, don't want their child in a combination section. So that can be an issue for families as well, because their preference is to be in a single grade section. When we have a lot of small schools, we have a lot of combos. All of the districts that I work for, when they get larger schools, we have more consistent staffing, meaning we have fewer of these combination sections, and we have these support service educators in the building more frequently when we need them. Nationally, many large suburban districts in Anchorage's size category are consolidating schools right now. They're moving toward having 3 section per grade level schools, and in some cases 4 section per grade level schools, and they're looking at combinations of adjacent buildings that may be small buildings and trying to combine those into a single larger building. So that's called school combination or school consolidation. So that's what this district is also looking at. We believe that that strategy actually, once the child is in the room with their teacher, the door closes, the bell rings, and instruction starts, that action is less harmful than there being 2 more children or 3 more children in that room. So if student-teacher ratio goes up 2 or 3, because of cost, that's going to affect every classroom. Now, if you're a school community member that's being considered for consolidation, that sounds great, but it's going to have an effect on your family and your child, and that's relevant because when we look at this school consolidation issue, it's going to affect schools, but it's not, and school communities and parents. But again, once those children are in the classroom, we have the ability to preserve what we have historically offered or avoid changes in class size. Now again, if we were fully funded, I just moved out of a 115-year-old house. I live in a town with 2,700 people. I like everything to be small. So schools are also very desirable when they're small from a community standpoint, a collegiality standpoint. But as a big institution, a school district like Anchorage that's trying to deliver a very specialized service to families and children, smaller tends to cost us more. And the 3-section per grade level school size is more desirable for us from a cost standpoint and from a human resources standpoint because of how we can staff those buildings. We can be more consistent with the staff that we do have, and our classes may be more consistent grade to grade. In a small school, you may have 25 first graders, 38 second graders, 25 fourth graders, and 40 fifth graders. As students cycle through a school with those heterogeneous grade sizes, how you staff those sections becomes a real concern because you don't really have the same thing every year. You have to use combination classes, and you have, because the schools are smaller, you have a certain amount of kind of small sample size problem when you have different grade sizes. And the smaller a school gets, the more volatile that gets. So our strategy is not only to consolidate small adjacent programs into larger schools, but we're also exploring the idea of moving the 6th grade into the middle schools. So that would take our middle schools that are currently grades 7 and 8 to being 6-8. So those students would be in those buildings for 3 years instead of 2 years, and those faculties would be 50% larger. So that would be another opportunity for us to see some economies of scale from a staffing standpoint. We would also be able to offer 6th grade students a full-scale elective program where they would be able to take elective classes and we would be able to cost-effectively deliver music education. So that's a real opportunity for us that we're considering. Let's see.
Shannon, just a time check. We're at 6:25.
Okay, I'm speeding up. So there's our birth rate. You can see that we have about 750 fewer babies every year in the Anchorage municipality than we did 5 years ago. So things have dramatically changed. We are already down, and the crop of babies that will be coming to us as kindergartners in 4 or 5 years is significantly smaller than it is now. When we look at our grade size, those blue bars on the left are from 2017. The red bars on the right are from 2022, this year. You can see there's about a 500 student difference between those two bars. And so we already have fewer students in our grades K through 8, and we're seeing fewer children coming to us from the preschool category that will charge up our kindergartens. So this problem of school size is significant. It's affected us over the decades, and it's about to get worse, and that's why we are considering taking action at this time. We're considering the closure of 6 schools that are listed there. I will not focus on those, but those are Abbott Loop, Birchwood, Klatt, Nunaka Valley, Northwood, and Wonder Park. Our plan for Nunaka Park is to take the students that are east of Boniface to Chester Valley and the students that are west of Boniface to Russian Jack. Now, there are about 55 students that are in the attendance area west of Boniface that would go to Russian Jack, and as a pedestrian, you would probably need to spill out onto Northern Lights and walk westerly and then back into the school from the north if you were walking. On the east side, we would assign the 75 students that live on the east side of Boniface to Chester Valley. There are another 75 students that live outside of Nunaka Valley's attendance area that come here to the school. There are a lot of early childhood programs in this building, and our initial repurposing proposal for this building would be to run this school as an early childhood center. So we would save a significant amount of money by doing that. This would still be a community facility, but it would be full of 3- and 4-year-olds. So that's the proposal. Now again, it's not something we take lightly. We want to have as complete a record of your perspective on what we're proposing to do here as possible. All of the town halls are being recorded and documented, and we're identifying good ideas. I've done this for almost 40 years now, and I have to tell you, I've heard ideas at town halls or open houses that ultimately got implemented. So, you know, we're receptive to ideas and concerns. We want to understand what your thoughts are about this proposal. This would be effective for this coming fall, for the fall of '23. So in late August, early September, whenever school starts up, we would be implementing the change. So with that, I'd like to initiate the town hall. I've got 22 folks who have signed up to speak. We would like you to come to this microphone and take not more than 3 minutes to issue your question or your comment. And with that, I'd like to invite Susan Williams to come up first, with Chris Terry to follow.
Hi, my name's Susan Williams, and I'm here tonight to speak against the closure of Nunaka Valley Elementary. I've been a resident of this neighborhood for 35 years. In my career, I worked 25 years for the Anchorage School District. During my tenure, I worked with school populations which were in economically challenged areas. One lesson I learned while working with the district is public trust is critical for the school district's success. Additionally, public perception is so important. As a taxpayer, it makes no sense to me to put $37 million into construction of Inlet View while closing 6 other schools. It does not make sense to me that there is a need, it does not make sense to me that if there's a need to close schools, that the impact can't be distributed across the socioeconomic spectrum in Anchorage. The plan currently calls for 5 out of 6 school closures to be in Title I schools. It is calling to create schools with even more densely low-income populations. Studies have shown this is not a good idea. Currently, Nunaka Valley students can walk to school. Every afternoon, I see parents, grandparents, older siblings walk the neighborhood to pick up students. The community patrol drives around between 3 and 4 to make sure all are safe. This would no longer be possible. The Nunaka neighborhood is bordered by very busy 4-lane streets. The plan calls for students to be bused to 2 neighboring schools. The bus driver shortage has not been solved yet this school year. There's no guarantee there'll be enough buses next year, putting our students at risk of not attending school. At times, the busing system can set up students to be unsuccessful during the school day. Packing kids on a bus can lead to bullying and is challenging socially for some students. I worked at 2 schools where the school boundaries were very large and most students were bused. Creating the connection with the school community was incredibly challenging. Engaging families and students in school activities and events was always an issue when there wasn't a defined neighborhood. Staff and students can interact and communicate with families when they are picked up students. This is not the same when kids are bused. Engaging families and students in their school community is critical to their success.
30 seconds.
As I reviewed the school board minutes of this school year, it is confusing to me the number of consultants that have been hired at big dollar amounts. I also see 2 schools up for closure on the 2023 bond proposals. Early in the school year, there seemed to be unspent monies. Hard to trust a system with this conflicting messages. No money, or is there lots of money for consultants? It is challenging to drill down through the budget to get at real expenditures, which leads to distrust among taxpayers.
Time, please.
Was that time?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you, Susan. Chris Terry.
I'm Chris Terry. I am a special educator. I work at Nunaka Valley. I've been here for 8 years, and this is a school that has heart, that has family, that has community support, as you can see tonight. The people who work in this school are feeling grief. We're mourning. We're just feeling like pawns in a big game that is moving preschools from another school to this school and our students to a different building. I just want to put out that our feelings are there and we hurt. That said, it's hard to see that this is actually going to save very much money. If it does, if it's beneficial, if it's good for the students, we back it because we are all about the students and we're all about the community. What we see in this school is that we have preschoolers on one hall and we have K-5 on the other hall. These students interact. They get to see and grow empathy and feel the pain of a 3-year-old crying and see that other people are having a bad day and they can help. The young people look up to the older students. There is so much value in having a diverse age group within a building that is lost when you make it all pre-K. I understand that there could be economies of scale, and I appreciate that, but it's not the only consideration. There are other ways that students are affected. And this student population, which has experienced so many hardships having to do with COVID in their school experience already, having another adverse childhood experience, another one of the ACEs we used to talk about and count, doesn't seem fair. If that's what we have to do, that's what we have to do. I appreciate how hard you are all working to come up with solutions, but I want to not ignore the feelings of what's happening.
Thank you, Chris. Dorothy McCauley, followed by Laura McNamara.
Hello. I just wanted to make a statement as someone who bought a home in Nunaka Valley in 2015, and it was, I had, my son was about 1, I was pregnant, my husband actually grew up in this neighborhood, it was kind of a dream of mine, and we moved here because we could, not have to use a car. We could walk our kids to school. When they're a little older, they can walk themselves, ride a bike, learn, independence, healthy living. We got the trails, everything. It was like dream. Actually, when I moved in, there was still People Mover, which I used to get around the city. I used with my kids. Went through the neighborhood, the en route, that's since gone. And so because this is our home that we're working on and making nicer, it's a long-term, vision that we have, and we don't plan on going anywhere. So I understand that the current plan is to put, preschool, but that's not the same kind of anchor to a community when it's, you're constantly having to get new kids. It's not, the kids in the area. I was very upset when I heard about Inlet View, and that being a rebuild and that being part of this. Anyway, I felt that I needed to say something here tonight. Because we intentionally moved here, and I just question the wisdom, I guess. I've always lived in Anchorage. I was born and raised here, and we've always had a really transient population. People are coming and going all the time. We're in an incredibly chaotic time right now. I understand the long-term birth rate issues all over the country, but at the same time, we have lots of immigrants in Anchorage. We have to kind of think also about, people being able to move up, from an apartment to a house like I did, and things like that. And if we want to be a desirable community, and if we want to have more people in Anchorage, so that, we have to be a place where people want to live, and so that people don't just feel stuck here, because, when that kind of thing happens, communities really fall apart. So, as long as you're not, boarding it up and bulldozing it and stuff like that, I guess, there's hope. But, I just wanted to give that perspective. So.
Thank you. Laura McDana, Laura? I'm sorry, thank you.
I will try this, if she takes over the voice. Well, my name is Laura McNown. I'm a special education teacher. I work here at this school as a preschool teacher, and I also live in this neighborhood. I appreciate that you created this town hall meeting so that we can learn from each other. I'm assuming that you want to learn from us, as well as we get to know what information you have for us. So please feel free to ask questions to us as well and take notes and things like that. So I'm a preschool teacher in this building, and I would like to highlight how this school setup as it is right now creates an inclusive environment for special education students and general education students of all ages. One wing of the school serves the elementary school, and the other wing of the school is basically preschool classrooms. The preschool wing has common areas such as the cafeteria and the gym. The big kids and the little kids are separated but have crossover points throughout the day. The interactions between older kids and the youngest are very beneficial, as the preschoolers look up to the older kids and they get a glimpse of what it will be like when they get to kindergarten or first grade. The peer interactions between the older students and our youngest are often speech delayed or have developmental delays. These are of immense value. Only this past week, a third grader knocked on my door with his teacher and asked if he could help me for 30 minutes in my preschool classroom. I believe this was a reward because he was having a really good day. I agreed quickly because I was about to give out lunch and could certainly use a helping hand opening bananas and pouring milk. The students in my class loved getting help from an older peer. They made use of their words more frequently and asked for his help while they ignored mine. On another occasion, last week, when playing outside in the snow, 2 students from kindergarten asked if they can play with our little preschool group, since they were outside while they had recess. 2 students bonded quickly and played together, crawling up and down a tiny snow hill. The next day, the same students stopped by quickly while outside just to say hi to their new friends. And I don't think I need to mention the benefits in social skills learned, the language skills, and the play skills that happen naturally in these situations. This school provides an ideal environment for these valuable moments to happen just naturally. And last, I have a few questions that I'd like to have answered. How will the school district save $500,000 or more by closing Nunaka Valley while they make it a preschool center? That would be one question.
30 seconds.
You communicated to the public also that the utilization percentage of the school is 66%. That sure looks like half of the building may be empty space. However, this is not the case, as almost all rooms are filled up with preschool classrooms. How do you explain this number? And also, when making the decision to close schools, will the school board vote on individual schools, making a case-by-case decision, or is it a yes/no to the proposal of school closures in general? Thank you.
I can talk the amount of savings per school. On tomorrow night's school board meeting, you'll see that some schools would save us in the $800,000 range. But for this particular school, because there still would be a staff required for the kitchen, for the main office and a principal, it would be about $300,000 So certainly much, much less in terms of savings. What it would provide, though, is something Eric can talk about, which is taking some of these very high-need, low-density specialists that simply aren't available in a school all day long, every day, and you have a much better chance of having one of those individuals in the school when they're needed, instead of having to wait a few days before their cycle would have them come by your school. And I think Eric can talk a little bit about that.
Yep. Thanks, Jim. Eric Visti, Senior Director for Elementary Ed. With the Early Childhood Center, what it would be is it'd be a blended program. So you'd have our general education program. The Nunaka Valley preschool program would continue to live and thrive here. The additional schools would have other programs coming into this school. You'd have both a special education or developmental pre-K. You'd have a general education pre-K. So you'd have a blend of programming here. Oftentimes in schools where you have very high need staff that are in very short supply, some of our specialists like occupational therapists, physical therapists, psychologists, speech pathologists. The students in our developmental pre-K programs have a requirement of federally programs, and a lot of the services that are provided are hard to fill positions. And so by consolidating those services within that population group, we'd be able to provide more consistent and better programming for kids ages 3 to 5 years old. That would be a success, and that would be a help for that population size. In addition, what we'd be doing is moving our early intervention services, how we look to identify students who need developmental pre-K. We'd be moving that center here to provide more access for eligibility for developmental pre-K, as well as trying to branch that program into other neighborhood so that the accessibility to early intervention services would expand. So those would be some pieces that tie into that early intervention, early childhood center.
Thank you, Eric. So I'll try to answer Laura's other two questions. The 60%, 66% utilization numbers, based on there being 205 students in this building, and I think its capacity is in the upper 300s. And we've already taken offline a bunch of rooms for non-gen ed programs, special ed rooms, special education resource spaces. So a lot of these spaces are utilized at a lower rate as far as how many children are in the room, but you will probably observe those classrooms in use. I don't know what the vacant classroom situation in the building is, and I don't have time to answer that question right now, but the metric that we're using to rate capacity is the Alaska Department of Early Development DEED office capacity model. And I've done these for hundreds of schools, and the model that the DEED office uses is really liberal, meaning they set aside virtually everything that is necessary for a program before they show what the final capacity would be. So I think the capacity for this building is fairly accurate. It's not harsh or overbearing, and I think that 60% utilization for this building is pretty realistic. Laura's last question was, will the board decide the 6 schools as a package, yes or no, thumbs up, thumbs down, or case by case? I can't speak for the board, but my experience has been that almost all boards, when they're looking at a menu of school closure alternatives, tend to take them one at a time. So that would be just based on my having worked for 200 school districts, what have I seen? But I don't know what the intention of the board is. So there we go. So I'd like to call on Christy Wood and Joel Potter to come forward next. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Christy Wood, and I don't have a student at the school. However, as a resident who has happily lived in this neighborhood for 22 years, I do have a lot of concerns about the school closing. I'll begin by thanking board member Carl Jacobs. Mr. Jacobs has met with us in person, via phone, via email. He's patiently answered dozens of difficult questions, and he's listened with compassion. And I really appreciate his professionalism during all these communications. I have 3 concerns to present tonight: the Inlet View rebuild, the potential injustice of how the schools chosen for closure are predominantly Title I, and the impact of this school closing on the rest of the neighborhood. At the end of this testimony, I'll give you my hard copy, which has my email address. I really would appreciate some feedback about my questions and concerns. In regards to the Inlet View rebuild, the voters turned down this rebuild in April, yet the board is currently willing to go against the wishes of the voters and simultaneously rebuild Inlet View while closing 6 other schools. The board already has a path forward for Inlet View by putting it on the 2024 school bond. Building a brand new building while closing our beloved neighborhood school feels a little bit like an insult. In regards to Title I, the optics of this are terrible. Title I elementary schools make up only 40% of the ASD population of elementary schools, yet account for 83% of the proposed cuts. Closing predominantly Title I schools increases the inequity of valuable public resources in Anchorage and cuts services to the people who need it the most. Why are so many of the proposed cuts in lower income neighborhoods? Should school closures eventually be determined as necessary, they must be spread out more equitably among neighborhoods that are not predominantly Title I. In regards to the long-term impact to this neighborhood, currently our little neighborhood enjoys a vibrant energy of young families moving in. They're willing to invest for the long term here since they have a great school in walking distance. If this school closes, those families will start looking elsewhere to other neighborhoods that still have schools. I understand you're not planning on closing this building, but I still don't understand where the savings are going to come from, and I really hope that pretty soon you're going to have some math and some data that you can share with the rest of us in the community to give us some confidence that this repurposing is actually going to work. I understand that you have difficult decisions ahead of you, and your first priority is to the students, families, and staff, but the long-term impact to these neighborhoods must be taken into consideration. Each neighborhood that loses a school becomes a less desirable place to live, enrollment goes down, contributed to more financial challenges in the future, and perpetuating the crisis that we are in now.
30 seconds.
Our research suggests that in times of fiscal crisis, school consolidation is often an emotional and political response, and each consolidation should be carefully vetted to ensure money is actually saved. Thank you.
Thank you, Christy. Joel Potter, followed by Kiara Soper.
My name's Joel Potter. I'm a professor at UAA and a resident of Nunaka Valley. Research supports the value of smaller schools like Nunaka Valley. They've been found to promote a greater sense of belonging, to have fewer disciplinary issues, higher teacher satisfaction, and better attendance and completion rates. The state of Alaska recognizes the value of smaller schools by funding them at a higher rate. What the public needs to understand is that with the consolidation of our elementary schools, ASD will forego these state funds. Because of this, I'm concerned that in the long term, consolidation will actually contribute to a budget deficit rather than alleviate it. Based on FY22 enrollment, my attached estimate, which I'll provide for you, is that with the proposed 6 school closures and consolidations, ASD will forego $3.6 million in annual base student allocation. That's $500,000 to $700,000 in lost revenue per closed school. Now, the state has a provision that will fund these schools at pre-consolidation levels for a couple years. But in 5 years, the schools involved in these consolidations will have to fully absorb these cuts, facing a 9% funding reduction. This is not much smaller than the 10.8 budget gap the district currently faces this year. Now, one might reply that in 5 years, the enrollment picture will be much worse, necessitating these consolidations. But what are these predictions based on? And what exactly is being predicted? Are the predictions specific to Northeast Anchorage? Do they take into account the census tracts in our parts of town that saw significant growth from 2010 to 2020? The public needs to see the math and supporting research. Now, it might be that the district will save some money from closures by relocating a few charters to ASD property. But how much will this save, and is closing schools necessary to achieve this? Could we achieve a large amount of these savings by having some of these charters share a building with an existing school, just as Nunaka Valley shares its building with a large preschool program? If the reason for consolidation is to fill the $68 million budget gap and do so in a way that doesn't generate a crisis a few years from now, then we need to see the math. If filling the budget gap is in a sustainable way is not the aim, then I don't know why the district leadership is pushing this through right now. It will require over 2,300 students to move to a different location next year, and will redraw the school boundaries for schools serving almost 4,500 students. Best practices in
30
rezoning
seconds.
show that sweeping changes like these should be the result of a comprehensive, public, and transparent process and not a rushed attempt to fill an immediate budget gap. I end with a factual question. What is the average daily membership for this year, and does it fit with the predictions about enrollment decline? Thanks.
Thank you, Joel. Kiara Soper, please. Sorry if I mispronounce anyone's name.
It's Sierra, but yeah.
Kiara, okay.
All right, sorry.
I think, Jim, you might be the right person for that one.
We do have slightly higher membership this year than last year. The bulk of it, though, went to charter schools and not brick and mortar school or homeschool programs instead of brick and mortar schools. And when I looked at Nunaka Valley from like 2017 to now, they've lost about 25% of their enrollment. It might have been 2015. When I looked at the other school that you put in the email that you sent, I think it was board members, the other school had lost about 33% of their total enrollment over that same period. So the declining birth rate, it's real. It's real Anchorage-wide. We really are seeing in our brick and mortar schools every year fewer and fewer students, and we have for several years. And so the money piece, I can certainly talk to you offline. We're going to show that to the school board a little bit more tomorrow night. But the efficiency of having so many vacancies and trying to send people to half a dozen different schools per week in order to meet students' needs, it's really that efficiency piece is kind of hard to tie a dollar amount to, but it's certainly a very real effort to provide better support to students in a larger school.
Thank you, Joel. Ciara?
Yep. All right. I am here to speak as a mother, not so much. Here, I'm going to put this down a little short. Thank you. I'm going to speak more as a mom than on studies, but thank you guys for your time. I have 4 children in the ASD. I have 2 that go to Nunaka. We actually go out of district. This school was the only school that offered 3-year-old preschool. So we got to come here, and then we got to stay. Since then, we have actually been looking to buy. We just put 2 offers in this neighborhood to buy houses, which now we have on hold just to see what's going to happen here. Their school experiences started here at 3 and 5, and it started online along with basically every other student that they're still with during COVID. So they got a unique experience to deal with during that. Since the beginning, our teachers have sat every single day and fought to teach them through the computers, and they never gave up. They developed a sense of family and trust by this. Our teachers continue to encourage our students and offer just as much help before and after school as during. This carried on through my experience throughout the past several years. Almost every student in my second graders class have been together since then. Over the past 3 years, many of the students in the class have continued to communicate outside of school and develop friendships. I can say at least 17 students in my son's class we speak to outside of school, including birthday parties, doing sports together, everything, and we have kept with this specifically for this school. Like we're supposed to be in a different neighborhood, and this has just stuck with us. My sons, I have a lot of ailments. My sons had, before Nunaka Valley, never really went anywhere else, never really got to do anything, and this is really upsetting to them, along with all of, many of the other students. I just, me and the moms get together and we actually talk about this in ways that we can try to send emails or get input and educate ourselves more on how to save money or do anything like that. Sorry, I've lost my way in this. Every day as I watch my son, along with most every other single student in the class, run up to at least one of their teachers or staff members, which Miss Jenner is a big one. She's our kindergarten teacher. And
30 seconds.
We have Miss Rose over there. She does our preschool. And seeing that shows me that many students are actually eager to come to school every single day, and when they come, it's not because they feel forced. As I wait to, research has shown that school culture has played a critical role in supporting academic success. Academic outcomes, social, emotional, and emotional competencies, and critical thinking skills are all enhanced when students have access to smaller. Is that it? Is that what you said? Yep. Okay, perfect. All right, well, just in conclusion, please take this into consideration. Our community is very important to us, and, you know, I heard it's school by school basis, so I hope that works out, guys. Thanks.
Thank you, Ciara. Aaron Willihan, followed by Sherry Biretta.
Hi. Okay. Hi, my name is Erin Willihan. I'm an alumni of Nunaka Valley Elementary. I grew up right across the street from the school. My mom worked here as a speech-language pathologist from 1995 till 2008. And I not only spent many days here as a student, but many afternoons and evenings waiting for my mom to get off work. I would absolutely credit the foundation of education and community I received at Nunaka Valley with my ability to succeed later in life. And at a time when our societies are more divided than ever, and animosity between parents, teachers, and school boards has increased across the country, we need schools like Nunaka Valley that bring people, families, and community together, as so clearly evidenced by this room tonight. That alone is worth protecting. That said, I think that this is also a short-sighted solution to a larger budget problem that will only result in more problems and greater economic, social, and cultural costs in the future. It was said that there are 18 schools with low enrollment, so why is it that Title I elementary schools make up 40% of the ASD population of elementary schools, yet account for 83% of the proposed cuts? This is an equity issue. Further, it does not seem like all of the options for addressing budget shortfalls have been considered with due diligence, and the costs of this decision far outweigh the short-term gain. If you bring in consolidation experts, of course the solution they will come up with is consolidation, but that does not mean that it's the only option. One question, my mom also could not be here tonight. Her name is Susanna Morales, and she wanted me to say a few words as well. This is from her. She said, I have worked in many ASD schools and have not felt the sense of community that I did at Nunaka Valley. There is so much to be gained from a small neighborhood school environment where most of the staff know or are at least familiar with most of the students and families. Nunaka Valley Elementary has always been a hidden gem in East Anchorage with dedicated staff, wonderful families, and a real community where children can thrive. It would be devastating to the neighborhood and a disservice to the children who live there to close this school. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Sherry Biretta, followed by Mitchell Cullum.
Good evening. I've come to speak in opposition to the closing of Nunaka Valley Elementary School. I attended Nunaka Valley over 50 years ago in 1970, and it was a safe haven for me and my brothers. And coming back into this gym, I was flooded with memories of getting hit in the face with a little dodgeball or sticking my tongue to the slide outside and playing out in the field, and this school is important to this community. And my family is from Tutitlik, and we would go back and forth in the summers. And I can just tell you that the schools in the villages are the heart of the community, and this school is the heart of this community. And this Nunaka Valley is a village of people who are raising their families here and will live here and are Alaskans, and they matter. And I just want to say that I also know that, I'm just finishing an 8-year term on the Board of Regents for the University of Alaska, and we've had to cut over $120 million from the budget, and it was very difficult and devastating. But it can be done without closing schools and without harming communities. And I'm urging you to look at other alternatives, and I'd be willing to work with you on a task force with community members to come up with ways to reduce costs and increase revenues and do bake sales. Look at what the gymnastics and the hockey teams did for the university. The community can come together, and you need to give them a chance to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mitchell Cullum. Is Mitchell in the room? Followed by Matt Flickinger.
Hi, good evening. My name is Mitchell Cullum. I'm an Anchorage resident, property taxpayer, former ASD student, husband of an ASD teacher, and father of a future student. We have heard ASD say that closing this school and 5 others will save around $600,000 per year per school. These proposed closures are happening at the same time that ASD board members will be voting on December 5th to allocate $37 million for a new replacement school for Inlet View Elementary in a high-income, politically connected downtown Anchorage neighborhood. If ASD adopted a remodel for Inlet View Elementary instead of a new construction replacement, it would free up $10 to $15 million in currently unallocated state funds. Let me be crystal clear here, and this has been confirmed by ASD's chief financial officer. These one-time state funds could be used by the board to keep this school open for many years to come, and could also be used to keep open popular language immersion programs, music programs, gifted programs, and after-school sports programs. ASD is in a tough spot budget-wise. There is no denying that. I understand and recognize this, but ASD needs to prioritize needs versus wants, just like you or I would do with our own personal budgets. If your personal car dies when you are in a tough spot budget-wise, you fix your old car if it's economical, or you buy a used car. You don't go and buy a new car. There may be those here that see my concerns as unrelated to your neighborhood school's closure, but ASD's inappropriate spending of limited funds affects all Anchorage residents and taxpayers. And these one-time state funds they received this summer can be used for many expenses, including keeping your school open. I urge those in attendance in viewing this presentation to contact school board members and ask them to fund an Inlet View remodel instead of a more expensive new construction replacement on December 5th. Feel free to remind them that the Anchorage voters rejected a bond proposal for a new construction Inlet View Elementary replacement back in April of this year. Also point out that the $37 million of unallocated state money they are considering spending on Inlet View was intended to be Anchorage property taxpayer relief
30 seconds.
And should not be used to subvert the will of the Anchorage voters. Your school's future will be determined by your neighborhood's engagement, emails, and testimony to school board members regarding their use of the $37 million bond debt reimbursement. Just as a reminder, tomorrow night at 6 p.m. would be a great opportunity to testify at a school board meeting, as would the December 5th board meeting when they will be voting on the Inlet View funds.
Time, please.
And I also have a question for you. Have you considered, your stated goal is to have schools at a higher attendance rate. This one's at, you claim 66, but that's probably inaccurate with the lower ratios with the pre-K classrooms, as you sounded like you kind of admitted there. Why not have an additional 2 more pre-K classrooms? Because according to the principal on the way in, there's a total of 2 classrooms that are going unutilized here. Why not add 2 more pre-K classrooms, and the school would be 100% utilized as far as classroom utilization? Maybe not on your numbers because they're not accurately reflected with the lower student-to-teacher ratios in the pre-K classrooms.
I'm going to call on Eric Viste to answer Mitchell's question real quick, and then next would be Matt Flickinger, followed by Rosie Anderson.
So the Early Childhood Center, by our projections, we would have approximately 264 students here at Nunaka Valley. The pre-K program, in part with some of the other closures that would be happening, would be relocating those classrooms from those closures here to Nunaka Valley. So there'd be another layer of impact from that, and that's what would be happening with the preschool.
Go ahead, Matt. Thank you.
Thank you. Matthew Flickinger, I'm community mentor, also grew up in this neighborhood. My family's been part of Nunaka since the 50s. My mom went to here. I did in the 90s, and my daughter went here. So a lot of history with this school and this community. I didn't think I was going to say much on this, but I was really intending just to have questions. But hearing the other speakers, I do find it's kind of pointless to be closing this school down when you have very little of a budget that's going to be resolved from this school's closure. 300,000, 68 million, it's just not adding up there. So I'd just like you to please consider what these people are saying. My questions that came from watching your presentation, what kind of raise to the BSA would be needed to make Anchorage School District sustainable? Also, are these school closures, are they at the ASD level or administration level, are they being considered permanent closures or a flexible plan that may be adopted or that may be changed in the future based on population changes and stuff? And then also the third one, is there any, seeing as there's going to be kids walking in a much longer distances, is there going to be plans to invest into walking plan improvements between the new schools in this neighborhood?
Okay, let me start with, you said, what was the BSA requirement? It's a little over $830 in BSA increase, and that's equal to literally 2% per year since 2017 if they would have kept up with inflation, because we've lost about $80 million in buying power between the BSA in 2017 and the BSA next year, and that's just to keep it even. Your second question, sir? Could you remind me?
Sorry.
Permanent or flexible plan for?
Yeah.
Explain that. So the hold harmless rule at statute level at the state is that once you close a school, it must be closed for 5 years before it can reopen. So frankly, we didn't want this school closed permanently. There's a reason why we didn't ask for this school to be closed and given back to the municipality. We wanted to keep it open because it is an area that a lot of people hope grows in the future. So if we weren't going to close it, what was the best way we could keep this building, this playground, this community alive, where this building stays here and is useful to ASD? And that was a recognition that we have a lot of schools with very small pre-K programs that really aren't being supported as well as they could because we don't have all of the specialists we need in the district. And we would advantage a lot of children if we could put 264 of them in this building while consolidating some very low density, meaning we can't hire them or find them specialists where they really could locate here. Not to mention the testing capability to be able to test more kids for entry into that 3rd and 4th grade things. So our intention was to keep this building alive as an ASD resource, and using it as an early childhood center buys this building 5 more years while we're going to be able to support about 1,000 plus kids in that type of environment.
Okay, and then I'll actually take back the other question about the walking plan. On that, what you just said, are there any of these proposed school closures that the facility is going to be given back to the municipality, or however that works? Are we going to lose these assets at all?
There is one of those that we have recommended that will go seek disposition to the municipality, and that's Abbott Loop.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Rosie Anderson, please, followed by George Martinez.
Hi, everybody. My name is Rosie Anderson, and I have been asked by some of the rock stars here in the neighborhood that took this letter around to collect signatures. And so far, they have collected 199 signatures for this. Nunaka is a true neighborhood school known for its dedicated staff and connection to the community. Teachers and social workers around the city speak well of the school. It is a hub for local identity and pride. A volunteer Nunaka Valley Community Patrol helps at the school crosswalk. Neighbors volunteer at the school-based ski program. Students eagerly say, "That's my school." Despite challenges many students face, it is a bright, positive place where all belong. The strength of a small elementary school like Nunaka Valley Elementary are reflected in a large body of evidence supporting the value of small schools. They are found to foster a greater sense of belonging, have better attendance and completion rates, markedly lower incidence of violence and vandalism, and higher reported teacher satisfaction. All these things contribute to better educational outcomes. Closing these schools will have long-term negative consequences for the neighborhoods. Young families will choose to invest their real estate dollars and energy in neighborhoods that still have schools. Nunaka Valley Elementary makes our neighborhood cohesive, connecting residents through a place of shared interest. This will be lost if the building is repurposed to serve those outside the neighborhood, bringing outside traffic and decreasing the neighborhood walkability, which is a strong selling point for homebuyers. Consolidation comes with many hidden costs and challenges. How will the displaced students get to their new schools? Won't these changes exacerbate the busing problem? How much will really be saved if most of the buildings are repurposed? If they are not, what are the costs to the district and neighborhoods if schools are left abandoned, even temporarily? How will consolidation impact staff morale and turnover? How will it impact enrollment? By the school board's own admission, disrupting these students' education is likely to negatively impact their educational progress. Low-income students in Title I schools suffer disproportionately during the pandemic and should not be subjected to further upheaval while schools in wealthier neighborhoods remain undisturbed. Closure of these schools should be an option of last resort. Reduction in extracurricular activities or sports, reductions in administrative expenses, or the postponement or cancellation of infrastructure projects should have come first. We ask that the school board and leadership find solutions that distribute sacrifices more equitably. We recognize that the district faces an extremely difficult situation, but it is not fair for small, lower-income neighborhoods like ours to bear the brunt of budgetary upheaval and lose part of what makes us who we are and brings families to our community. Please reject the plan to close and repurpose these neighborhood schools. And on a personal note, I agree with what it says here, Nunaka Valley rocks. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosie. George Martinez, followed by Maggie Massey, please.
In fact, Nunaka Valley does rock. Good evening. Let me start by expressing my appreciation for the opportunity to be with you all tonight at this town hall meeting and for my deep pride in my neighbors and our champions of this elementary school. My name is George Martinez, and I'm here to speak on behalf of the diverse interests of the residents of this area as the president of this community council, of which Nunaka Valley Elementary is a part of, the Northeast Community Council. I'm also a proud product of public education of a Title I school living in a low-income community. Members of our community council have expressed serious concerns. You've heard from several of them this evening, and they have raised significant questions of equity, displacement, impact to property values, community cohesion, among other things. Yes, these concerns are going to be echoed by all of those communities impacted by a potential closing. I do appreciate the board members who have been showing up for us because they are demonstrating to be thoughtful and careful stewards of our public education, helping this administration navigate the challenges before us. Today I'll offer a little guidance as you navigate these fiscal challenges. First, in our community, families are more likely to have a second job than a second home. In lower income, historically disadvantaged communities, we don't always have the luxury of stopping unwanted changes. We have the resiliency to adapt, to innovate, and to improve through difficulties, not without them. I'll note that in East Anchorage, residents are particularly sensitive to being blindsided by repurposing. We've had a long summer coming to grips with that concept. The people of every neighborhood school should have a seat at the table as early as they can in the process. We acknowledge that structural challenges must be addressed in Juneau, like raising the BSA and equitably distributing resources to ensure that Anchorage gets its fair share. But perhaps the biggest impediment at the state level is the lack of willpower and understanding. Let me be clear. The less we invest in public education, the more we threaten the repurposing and closing of schools, the slower we will grow and the faster we will erode our tax base.
30 seconds.
We also know that population shifts has impacted the formula. Keep us at the table as you're having these right-sizing conversations. If we're in this together, then work with us as partners, please, not as consumers of education subject to product changes from on high. Please work with us at every table all the time. This is a community school. This is a neighborhood that votes. We vote on school bonds and we vote on school board members.
Please.
We would like a comprehensive strategy, not a short-sighted one. And one person left, so with all due respect, a young family had to go for bath time, and I offered to give them 10 seconds of my time. The Stevens family, they moved to this neighborhood with the expectation that they would have their child grow up in this neighborhood with the school. There are many families who present themselves. I offered their testimony as well. Please hear us tonight and work with us. Do not blindside us. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Maggie Massey, followed by Aaron Pascal. Maggie Massey. Okay.
Hello. Thank you for coming to our neighborhood. My name is Maggie Massey. I have lived here for about 3 years now, and I plan to live here for a lot longer than that. I also want to thank all of my neighbors who are here. I've learned so much from everyone and what you've been sharing this evening. I came here feeling really strongly that I was so opposed to closing this school, and my resolve is only strengthened now, hearing all of you. So thank you for that. I am not a parent, but I'm here because as a member of this community, as a member of this neighborhood, the school means a lot to me too. It's an important part of how I think about where I live and who we are and how we interact with each other and what our responsibilities are to each other, and that matters to me. That's an important part of why I like living here. And so I think that there's real value in maintaining community schools like this one beyond the parents and the students and the teachers. And I just want to give a voice to that as well. I have many concerns, and my concerns have raised significantly after hearing from you all this evening. I have concerns about closing this school and causing students to need to walk on potentially dangerous roads to other schools. I'm concerned that if busing is the alternative option, that there won't actually be a busing plan in place that will serve those students and their families. And I'm not sure if we have any answers to that yet, but that's something I would love to hear more about. And I am also extremely concerned about the percentage of Title I schools that are being proposed for closures. And I know a lot of people have said that here tonight. I came in concerned about that. I'm leaving even more concerned about that. And I guess one question that I have is if there's any explanation that you can give for why there's such a high percentage of these schools that are slated for closure under this proposal.
So I can talk a little bit about it, but every school is uniquely different. If you look at this portion of town in northeast Anchorage, there's about 10 schools that are all within a mile or less of each other. When it was originally built, there was a high concentration of young people with children or people with larger families. And so it was built exactly the way it should have been built for that time period. Over time, and it's Anchorage-wide, it's not just this area, but when you have this cluster of a large number of schools in a small area, where now the percentage of school-aged children keeps getting smaller every year, then you have this big, huge group, this chunk of schools where there's so many of them close to each other, but at the same time under capacity. And that's why this area was looked at. It wasn't, I mean, it is personal, right? Everyone in the room knows this is personal. If you're in this area, or if you work at this school, or if your kids go to this school, it is personal. We know it's personal. Just like sixth grade band and orchestra is personal to some kid who's never going to make a football team, or Ignite is personal, and the only reason that kid enjoys going to school that week. Everything about what we're bringing to the board is personal. And we appreciate that, we respect that. I can tell you that our representatives in Juneau, I have seen them almost every year for the last 6+ years. And when I go into their offices, not all, but about half, tell me that other than me and one or two other educators, no one is coming to tell them about education funding. Year after year after year after year, I have had legislators tell me that no one other than me is asking for education funding. And they're legitimately concerned about drugs and crime and suicide in the PFD. And you know, we saw a record PFD this year. But those legislators who don't increase school funding really believe they're representing their constituents, because the public hasn't let them know that education funding is important. And so, you know, I'm not slamming people who have not had any constituents tell them education needs to be a priority. I'm explaining why education has not been a priority in Juneau, and it's because the Anchorage public doesn't talk to them enough about education funding. And so when you look at 7 years of a base student allocation not changing, and now it's the exact same amount per student as 7 years ago, but it's worth $80 million less, of course everyone wants creative solutions. For the last 5 years, if you look at those gaps between the red line and the bar, we have cut so many things that no one in this room noticed until we finally got down to everything that's personal. And I'm with you. It's personal. I mean, frankly, I really don't want to be up here, but I owe it to you. I owe it to try to explain that we have cut and cut and cut and cut, and we're finally at the point where we're not even providing the level of service we need, because we have classrooms that are 1.5 classrooms of first graders, 1.5 classrooms of second graders, and now we have combo classes. We average on any given week 200 substitute shortages per day, because we're trying to spread them out into schools that can't pick up that class as if it was a 3-section grade where they could pick up that other class and maybe not having to have a substitute. But Anchorage has lost over 5,000 students. We have the same infrastructure, and another 2,000 have gone to homeschool correspondence charter schools. So when you have the same infrastructure and you lose 7,000 kids, there's nothing fair about it. And I get it, and it is personal.
Well, thanks for that, and I guess I appreciate that, and I'll just echo what the previous speaker said about all of us working together and making sure that we're all communicating to get to a solution that everyone at least understands how we got there. Thank you.
Aaron Pascar, followed by Lois Epstein, please.
Good evening. Most everybody knows me. I'm Aaron Pascar. Excuse me. I do the community patrol. I've done it for 27 years. And the reason why I do it, everybody has reasons for doing their own thing. Mine is for kids, okay? Adults can take care of themselves, most of them can, but mine is about kids and the kids' safety and the kids' attitude. I now do since I retired 17 years ago, I'm the one that does the crossing guard that you hear about. So I've been doing that for 17 years. And these kids have a routine with me. They come in, I tell them to smile, I tell them to have a good day and they say the same thing back to me. This is locking locking together, not just me, but with the kids. And they all have a cohesion with each other. And, we talk about money, we talk about this, but we don't talk about the kids themselves, how it's affecting them. I mean, they're the ones that are being affected by this. If they get changed to another school, they're not going to learn good, first of all, because they're breaking that system, or not the system, but their cohesion and, that. I'm not a very good speaker, I just act. But they really need that standard and being together in one place instead of shipping them all over. And you talk about walking down the Northern Lights. Those people drive like crazy out there. You can't have little kids walking down Northern Lights. So what do? You got to bus them. But we don't have the buses. So what's that going to be like? It's just one thing after another. We talk about money all the time. I realize it's a business. But these kids are not business. They're human beings. And I have 3 generations that's gone to this school. I've been in this neighborhood since '74. That's 48 years. My kids, my grandkids, and now my great-grandkids are coming to the school. And I see the same thing with these other folks. When they were little, I was doing a crossing guard. Now they're adults and their kids are coming.
30
so,
seconds.
I mean, it's just everybody wants this neighborhood to stay the same. So I'm asking you, really give it a lot of consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Lois Epstein, followed by September Shedlock, please.
It's hard to follow. Hello, my name is Lois Epstein, and I am an Alaska licensed engineer who lives near but not adjacent to Inlet View Elementary School, which is located near Westchester Lagoon. Inlet View is a lot like Nunaka Valley, a beloved small neighborhood school. There are lots of reasons why the proposed rebuild of Inlet View doesn't make sense, but I will not go into those details tonight. What I will say to this audience is that the rebuild is way too expensive at $38 million. And a remodel built close to the current footprint makes the most sense. That would save approximately 10 to 15 million and could keep Nunaka Valley and other schools open. I urge you, as parents and others interested in Anchorage School District spending, and as several have said tonight, to encourage the school board to fund a remodel and not a rebuild of Inlet View when it makes its budget decisions on December 5th. And last, I mentioned this at another town hall meeting to Mr. Bingham, I would say that walkability needs to be a bigger factor in keeping a school open, which would argue for maintaining Nunaka Valley. Thank you.
Thank you, Lois. September Shedlock, followed by Nancy Patterson, please.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you, community, for supporting us. I am more than blessed to be a part of the Nunaka Valley family, because that's what we are here. My son was diagnosed on the autism spectrum July 23rd, 2015. I had the choice to make between Wonder Park Elementary and Nunaka Valley, And I am so blessed that I chose this school. I'm 43 years old. I've gone to school in Anchorage. I've lived here my entire life. I started at St. Elizabeth Ann Seton School. I've been to Northwood Elementary School, Turnigan Elementary School, Romig Junior High. Well, now they're all going to be middle schools, I guess. West High School. And I can honestly say I have never been in a family school community in a public school setting like I have been here. My son has been going here for 8 years, and he knows no other school, which he will learn, and we will all get through that. But at the same time, families are buying homes to come to this school because it is such a community. And I know that there are multiple teachers that drive across town just to work at this school because it's such a family. I have never seen a principal out playing basketball, and this is such a special place. We've got to fight to keep this school. And I know everything's personal for everyone, but I have got to stand up. We all have to come together as a community. This is a very, very special place, and it cannot go anywhere. So let's fight together, let's find a solution, and let's keep Nunaka Valley growing, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, September. Nancy Patterson, followed by Martin Hanson.
Hi, good evening. My name is Nancy Patterson. I'm a community member here in Nunaka Valley, and I'm thrilled to be surrounded by my neighbors here in our neighborhood school. I really appreciate all the information that you've shared and the difficult decisions that you've been processing through. I want you to know how much I appreciate that information that you've presented to us throughout the evening today. I also really value all of the comments of my community here, the energy that has gone into getting information out, sharing the word, and making sure that we do stand up and help our community, our neighborhoods here. One of the reasons my husband and I decided to move to Nunaka Valley in 2019 was because of how walkable this neighborhood is. It has a real community feeling. It's easy for children to walk to school. We can walk to our local grocery store. We don't have to drive. It's easy to get on a trail system. And one thing I love envisioning as well is thinking about children who go to this school who can then bike safely or could walk safely to Begich Middle School and also to East. When I think about things like climate change and the impacts of living in an Arctic location like we have here in Anchorage, to me it is so important that we find ways to keep our communities together in our neighborhoods so that we can have a sustainable lifestyle, a healthy lifestyle, one that does encourage our people to be together, to enjoy these spaces, and to find ways that where they don't have to rely necessarily on transportation to get around, where they can be located here in this space. One thing I found myself thinking about significantly over the course of the time that these decisions have been coming forward is the number of young families that I see moving in here, other people who are like me, who have children. We've seen so many of them here, and they're in that pre-elementary age and are going to be growing up here. So I feel heartened knowing, Mr. Anderson, that you shared that this is a potential pre-K place because that may serve a need and keep this school open for those 5 years. But mostly I hope that we keep that integrity of preschool that goes into kindergarten that is all the way up through the 5th grade model, because there is so much value in our young children seeing and learning from their peers, their others, having people like Nunaka Valley Patrol that comes and helps take care of them, and having that multi-generational experience in our neighborhood. I love how diverse this neighborhood is, that it's a place where people can do that, where they can safely have their children walk, and where we see people from all over the place in this area. It truly is an anchor of this
30
community.
seconds.
One thing I would also encourage is looking at where do families potentially send their children. If they are going more and more into a homeschool model, if they're taking their kids into other schools or charter schools, what would it take to make this school the place that people come to, that is the brick and mortar school that they want to come to, that is that integrity and rock in its neighborhood? And what will it take in order to make this be that place where it's a neighborhood school, the school on trail system that we have in Nunaka, and that it's a close, walkable, and community-based feeling? Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Martin Hanson, followed by Liz Williams, please. Martin, are you in the room? Martin Hanson, oh, here we go.
Thank you. I needed that last drink of water. I've been shaking off whatever it is that's been going around the schools and knocked me for a loop for 12 days. Good evening. My name is Martin Hansen. I thought that I was retired, but I'm not. 3 days a week, I'm a kindergarten teacher's aide in a Willowa school, another Title I school. My family has lived next to Inlet View School for 36 years. We were surprised and disappointed when ASD unveiled its plans to rebuild Inlet View at great cost to a poor design. We have fought this plan, and this is what we found. Those Inlet View parents who support the total rebuild are very well organized, very influential, very political, and possibly, most important, this is my point, 60 to 100 Inlet View parents attend and testify at school board meetings, and they are heard. They press hard for ASD to devote that remaining $37 million to rebuilding Inlet View School. Well, I'm encouraging all parents who care about their small neighborhood school to do the same thing. It's worth your while to attend and testify at ASD board meetings. ASD staff, officials, and board members are courteous. Well, they're friendly and courteous and receptive. They will listen to you, and they need to hear you, because all they have heard so far is the parents who are so firmly, irrevocably in favor of spending all that money on one school. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Liz Williams, followed by Mary Kay. Kenson.
Good evening. My name is Liz Williams. I live in this neighborhood. I don't have children, but I live here because this school is the anchor of this community. The children in this Title I school should not have to spend their time being bused when, as others have said, it's more healthy, it's environmentally friendly for them to walk. This feels like educational injustice. Most important, however, why on earth would we disconnect a tightly woven community in these times of heightened social division? Community is the soil that sprouts good citizens. Community can't be bought, but I know it's worth more than $500,000 or $800,000. And tonight, I would like to respectfully request that you don't balance the books on the backs of the children who attend this Title I school. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Kenson, followed by Carla Hollingsworth, please. Okay.
Good evening. I'm Andy Malauskas, neighbor, community member. Thank you for your time. I have learned things tonight, but what I would maybe ask is, as you go forward in these, what I feel like I came here and learned, well, at least initially in the presentation, I don't feel like there are other options and the pros and cons of other options that you guys may, or I'm sorry, pardon my ignorance on what those may or may not have been, but I just don't know, and that wasn't presented, so I sort of feel like I came here and it's the old saw about a carpenter who only has a hammer, everything's a nail. So, you know, maybe going forward, if there is more of that discussion, then a lot of the stuff that was brought up through these comments, maybe it'll be answered beforehand. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you, Mary. Carla Hollingsworth, please.
Good evening. My name is Carla Hollingsworth. I go by Kai, so some of you know me by Carla and some by Kai. I am a paraprofessional with the school district working with adults with special needs. And I am a Nunaka Valley resident for over 20 years. And what I would like to do is offer some of the thoughts I've had, but I also wanted to say thank you to you for your time and the amount of energy you put into trying to find solutions that will work for the whole district and the whole community. And I do hope that you're able to process and incorporate some of the ideas that have come forward tonight from this group of people. Some concerns I have are indeed that it seems the schools that host Title I families that, what's the word I want? Title I is a program from the federal government to support families, and families that have particular needs, and low income being that criteria. And while the density of this area is historically created by the density of the population, and while that population may be dropping, there is a value that needs to be placed on serving people who have the highest level of need and balancing that and finding a way to factor that into the monetary decisions that we make. I want to know how much money will be spent making junior highs more able to absorb all of the sixth graders, because I know there will be a cost to that, and I don't know how that's been factored in. I have a suggestion. If it is really important that we consolidate our related services staff and our hard-to-find staff like speech teachers and OT and PT, perhaps we could do something like this model where we have schools that are underutilized and we bring preschool programs into those schools to help fill them, and we don't consolidate into one big program where, again, we've got this large group of very small people who need to see older students to know how to behave. They don't just model off of adults, they model off of their just slightly older children. They're gonna respond more strongly to them. So that's an idea I have that might be useful to bring some gain financially, to consolidate our resources, but not break up schools, and to actually create maybe something even better by having this multi-program approach in some of the schools in East Anchorage in particular. I appreciate the information about the Inlet View rebuild tonight. I have one other conversation piece which has nothing to do with Nunaka Valley, but when I was looking at where stream is being placed,
Time, please.
I don't see that area as being highly wooded or highly available for science, and I see that if this school needs to be repurposed, perhaps this area so close to Rush and Jack would be a better place for stream. Thank you.
Thank you, Carla. Well, that's our last speaker. I'd like to thank everybody for coming this evening. I'd like to thank our panel and all of the folks that came to hear what you had to say. As far as our plans, we are transcripting everything that's being said at the town halls. I'm kind of reducing it so that it will be easy for the board to understand various perspectives and for various ideas that were central, that were repeated multiple times. I'm keeping a log of how many people spoke in favor of certain issues. So your perspectives will be as accurately communicated to the board as possible, and they'll be able to see the extent of those specific items that had a lot of interest. We have not been doing that. Given how long these events have been running, a lot of folks have childcare issues, and it's 7:45. So we have several other opportunities, though, where I think we would be able to receive further comment. There'll be another town hall Wednesday night at Clatt Elementary, where we could also receive further testimony using the sign-up process. And also there will be virtual events. There will be 2 more town halls the 3rd week of November, just before Thanksgiving, and then there'll be another 2 virtual open houses, and then another one another virtual town hall in December. So there are a lot of additional opportunities. I'd like to suggest that we try to wrap up tonight, and if you would allow, we could receive your testimony at another event. Boy, I think that I'm trying to decide who I defer to because I'm a guest here and I'm not really responsible for making that decision. So, all right, well, there you go. So we're going to go until the big hand sits on the 12. And I'm going to apologize to the IT team folks and the media folks. And we are going to keep a 3-minute clock. So MJ, if you could continue to take a 3-minute clock. Who are the other community members that wanted to speak? Yes, ma'am. So there's one, or there are others? Two. Okay. And so why don't you go ahead and come forward and speak. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Alicia. I'm a mom of 3 kids that go here. A lot of the teachers know me. My oldest is in 4th grade now. Ms. Jenner has taught all my boys. Ms. Webb has taught 2 of them. Mr. Blake plays football with my boys at recess every day. My 8-year-old has very severe ADHD, and he has worked with Miss Terry since he was 3 years old. He's not good with change. He's terrified to go somewhere else. My 9-year-old actually just texted me and asked me how many driveways he could shovel to keep his school open. I didn't plan on tearing up at all, but this school is everything to us, to my boys. I'm a single mom. I mean, their principal, their teachers show up to their football games, and where does that happen? That never happened for me as a kid. I worked here for a certain period of time, about a year ago, before I had my last child, and helped out with Miss Terry and a lot of the special needs kids. We don't have a lot of preschool programs, no, but they're small, but they work. They're very close-knit. Like I said, my family is very well known here. And to close this school would be really rough on a lot of people. So yeah, just wanted to give that.
Thank you. And one last speaker, would you like to go ahead, ma'am? Yes, it's up to you.
Well, a little embarrassed, but like Spanish, never embarrassed for speak my rights. I've been here. I have a question. All these 3 gentlemen, have you ever been in Nunaka Valley, living or rented? You did. So the reason I ask this question is because I've been here since 1970. I am a person that I be able to help people, to support people, maybe working or volunteer or substitute. I work in the school district. I feel really, really disappointed when I heard this, they're gonna close Nunaka. Nunaka is not just a school. Nunaka is a family. Nunaka is a neighbor, healthy neighbor, very healthy. I'm very proud of being in Nunaka for more than 40 years. Never hear bad things. The kids are perfect. I've been here as a substitute. I've been here as a substitute, as an employee, and as a volunteer in this school. Because I'm always there for whoever wants me to, until God take me. Because if God left me here, it's for a reason, not for be sitting or doing nothing. Okay? So, in the name of everyone who live in this neighborhood, I'm talking on behalf of my husband. My husband was a great teacher, one of the best. He was an ELS teacher. He has the hardest job ever. I don't say that my teachers don't work hard, because I work with teachers. And I work in one of the most difficult schools. but I never give it up. Everybody told me that I was a masochista because I will not move it to another school. I said, no. Until I'm not killing nobody here, nobody could throw me out of here. They want it because I was different. I talk different, I look different, and all this quality for them, not for me. Nobody is different for me. I take everyone the same way. I respect everyone the same way. And I speak for my right. That's why they maybe don't like me. But I don't care. That's the way I was. And I say the good thing. I don't say bad things about people. If I want to say the bad thing, you would be surprised because I have a lot of bad things about people.
30 seconds.
Thank you for the time. So I want to say, please do something. Do something for this school, for the community. These are healthy community. We have other community are not as healthy as we are. I'm afraid that these kids going there in 6th grade, 5th grade, they're not going to come back the same as that they graduated here. That's for sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I'm sorry, George. I promised you that I would come here to listen. I am not part of the Nunaka family, and I wish I was. It is a great school, and I can hear the heart. What I want to comment on is to my elected officials. I want you to stand up and commit right now to meeting with us in December at an education summit. We're putting something together. If I can get the Anchorage School District and other board members and the other school districts around the state to commit to come to Anchorage and maybe even make it a statewide summit, that you will listen to their concerns before you go into session in January. I know it's an informal meeting, and before the words PFD crosses your lips in January, because we know it's going to, but we have to fix it now. The board members have a statutory, requirement to have a balanced budget by February. You have not, they need to hear from you that you're committed and you're on record to being committed to support these schools.
On the record, I'm committed.
I know you are. I know it.
We've already talked about this. Of course, I want to increase the DSA.
We don't have a choice.
Well, I'm committed. I think all legislators in this room are committed. But the question I have for the school district is, if we get you that BSA increase that you've asked for, which you need, and I support completely, will you agree not to shut down these schools? I'd like a commitment from the school district right now.
So, that was unexpected.
Sir, so you know the timeline. The chart that I briefed at the very beginning of the brief that showed the fiscal cliff is the exact same chart I briefed to the Anchorage caucus last December. Only one change was the $30 for FY24. I briefed that same chart in Juneau at House committees, Senate committees. It was briefed at joint committees. We have a charter that requires us to pass a budget in February. We have a state statute that says it has to be a balanced budget. In order to pass a budget in February, we have to know what schools are in that budget and what are all the expenses that we budget toward that. So if the legislature could convene on the 15th of January and in the next several weeks fix the BSA problem, I think board members and the administration would work all night and all weekend to fix it. But I appreciate your question, but right now, we have a state statute and a charter, and it tells us exactly what we have to do and by when. And we have never had one-time funding approved prior to May timeframe. And once we start moving the equivalent of 6 to 10 schools equipment back and forth across the city, and in a 9-week period, try to execute and implement and get everything set up for the beginning of the school year, it would be very difficult to stop that kind of forward movement. When you look at this particular school, and it has such an amazing pre-K program, we already know that in round 2 closures, if the legislature can't fix it, and I'll defer to experienced legislators, but if they can't get that corrected, in round 2 closures, there are going to be many buildings that we can't find a repurpose plan for as easily as we could this time. So when I said the staff realizes how personal this is, there's a lot of people who love this school. There's a lot of people who want to make sure this school stays in ASD. And honestly, the repurpose plan, by picking one of the best pre-K programs in the city to be a base for expanding out and being able to retain this school in this community, I mean, there was a lot of discussions that we don't have publicly, but I mean, I can't think of anyone who said anything bad about Nunaka Valley, and that's why we came up with a repurpose plan to keep it in the district as we work through what has been 7 straight years of flat funding by our state legislature and the BSA.
Thank you, Jim.
Is that a yes or no to his question? Or is it not that simple?
Well, nothing's that easy when it's a hypothetical question for a situation that hasn't experienced, and I haven't experienced it in this job. But it would certainly be a school board decision, and it would be very difficult. Would people want to? Then you go back to the efficiency and which schools are the least efficient, and do you continue having 200 vacant substitutes every single day across the district when combining is not just about money, combining is also about efficiencies, and efficiencies make a difference in the level of service we provide to kids regardless of the amount of money that you save. So it's a difficult question, and I appreciate being put on the spot. I kind of get paid for it tonight, but I just don't know how to answer that.
Great.
Hey, everyone, can we give a hand for Jim and to the staff?
All right, well, on that positive note, I would like to conclude this evening's meeting. Thank everybody for attending, and stay tuned, and we'll continue to be in touch with everyone as this issue goes forward. Thanks again.